So it's the final applicant for our new staff on the museum, and as the museum's getting quite big now, we thought we'd get a guide. So we put an advert saying, wanted museum guide for hazardous journeys, low wages, bitter cold, long hours in complete darkness, safe return unlikely, honour and recognition in the event of success. Only the one applicant, who I believe, Robin, you can tell us about.
Yes, I'm going to put in my best friend, who happens to be a Penang hunter-gatherer called Nyapun. In rainforest, he is the man to have with you. He came into my life shortly after we started this big expedition in the middle of Borneo. He just appeared out of nowhere. We'd heard about these legendary people. We'd been told they were all extinct. In fact, there were many of them, and there still are, the Penang. And this wonderful character, wearing a bark loincloth and holding a blowpipe and with a quiver of arrows, just appeared and walked up to me, and we both spoke some Malay. And I asked him where he came from, and he said, from over there. And the next morning, very early, I ran for 10 hours behind him, which is quite difficult behind Penang because they keep stopping and looking at wildlife, and you bump into the back of them. But we ran through the forest to where his family was, 2 wives and 10 children. I stayed the night with them and ate what they had, which was sago and wild pig, which is what they live on. None of the family had ever seen a European before. Nyapun had. He'd been to different places. But his family, the next day, followed me back to base camp and became my family for the next year. And Nyapun became my shadow. Once when I got separated from my pack on the wrong side of a river that was in flood, and I got in a bait, as one does at moments like that, and said, I haven't got anything. We're going to have a horrible night. I'm going to get wet. I'm going to get cold. I'm going to be very unhappy. Nyapun said, just shut up, settle down. And he built a little house, went out, hunted down a mouse deer, cooked it, lit a fire, got some other wild vegetables and things, had a wonderful stew. We had a marvellous night, and I suddenly realised that he had nothing except his blowpipe and his machete, and that was it. But he could live completely comfortably in the forest, whereas the rest of us, all the scientists, we needed all our baggage and our gear and our mosquito nets and all that stuff. After that, I just had him beside me all the time, and he's always remained my best friend. If you want an expert for the museum, if you want somebody who knows everything, he knows the whole of Penang culture. Nyapun is an old shaman, a witch doctor. He can do the dances, he knows the poetry, he knows the language, and he also knows everything about the wonders of the rainforest and all the richness that's in there. So Nyapun is my contribution to the museum.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic, isn't it? I don't know about anyone else, but when he was describing that meal, I was there, weren't you? Oh.
Exactly.
He's the civilised one, isn't he?
What would he make?
Infinitely.
He's never been over here, presumably.
No, he's never been out of Mulu, out of the area that he's in.
What would he make?
Oh, he would understand it all. One night, he sang this long poem about meeting us and how the world had changed. And it went back 40 years of time when the Japanese had been there, running away at the end of the war. If you remember, at the end of the war, a man called Tom Harrison was parachuted into the tribes in the interior of Borneo and told all the people there who'd been told by district officers that they were not to take heads anymore, that headhunting was bad, was finished, wasn't British, wasn't done. And they'd said, actually, cancel that, it's okay for Japanese. And the Kalabit and other tribes all rushed out. Tom Harrison had the best war record of anybody because he and his team, barefoot with blowpipes, killed 5,000 Japanese for the loss of 2 men who stepped on a mine. And that was incredible. And anyway, Nyapun had been part of that, and he remembered hunting the Japanese through that area. And he then said nothing happened for about 15 years. And then all these soldiers arrived, and they set up a camp. This was the Green Jackets during Konfrontasi in 1965. And he said, my brother and I went and we looked at this, and they had all these guards posted all the way around. But there was obviously one tent in the middle, which was the most important man, must be the chief. So we walked past the guards when they weren't looking and came into the tent. It must have been a wonderful moment. There was the colonel sitting there, well protected by an entire regiment that was set up camp in the rung. Suddenly these 2 naked tribesmen came in and said, what are you doing here? In best Malay, which he would have spoken. And he said that was interesting. They stayed for a bit and we helped them. And then nothing happened for about 20 years. And then you came.
Well, Robin, we gratefully accept Nyapun onto the museum staff as the senior guide. I think we'd have to make him. Thank you very much.